Good morning, everyone. We're going to begin our 2022 Ramshorn Homeowner Association annual meeting. My name is Denise Bulat. I'm the president of the board of directors, and I'm going to ask the other board of directors to please introduce themselves and say where they're from. I'm from Bettendorf, Iowa, by the way. Let's begin with Clark.
Okay, Clark Blair, Nebraska. It's not for everybody.
Steve Hughes from Northwest Arkansas, Bella Vista, Arkansas, and it is for everybody.
Denny McClatchy from Santa Barbara, California.
Mark Meinert from Sylvania, Ohio.
Matt Hansen, Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's not always a good life either.
Sally Langston, Louisville, Colorado.
Thank you, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to ask for a moment of silence. We had two prior board members pass away in the last 12 months. One was Buffy Owens. She grew up here in Estes Park and lived in Hawaii. She ran the child care facilities for the state of Hawaii, and she also had her own catering business. So she brought a lot of value to the board because of her business management and HR knowledge. The other was Gerald Carter. He was a very good friend of my husband's and mine, and he was from Texas. And you could tell he was from Texas. And the thing that Gerald did was he was one of the owners who made it possible for us to become an owner association rather than a developer association. He was the boots on the ground, one of those people that made it happen. And then he remained on the board till 2010, and actually the position I hold right now was his position. So I would ask for a moment of silence for both of them. Thank you. Now we'll begin the business portion of the meeting, and we'll begin with Denny McClatchy. He's going to discuss the quorum or lack thereof in our minutes.
Morning. Pursuant to our bylaws, an official meeting requires an attendance of at least 20% of ownership weeks to meet quorum requirements. Based on today's attendance, as tabulated by those here and RSVPs for the Zoom, we fall way short of that quorum requirement. Therefore, there can be no official action taken today. However, as in the past, we trust the information provided will be helpful in providing the current nature and status of your resort. And questions can be asked through the chat mechanism on the Zoom, as well as questions here. Minutes of this meeting will be taken and will be posted, as all minutes are, on the Ramshorn website. But again, because the meeting is unofficial, so will the minutes be considered so. With this acknowledgement, we can proceed.
Thank you, Denny. For those of you who can't be here in person, the resort looks great. And of course, that's due to our fantastic management and staff. It's our home away from home, and we all appreciate their hard work, and I hope when you're here in person you make sure that they know how much you appreciate their hard work. Because of that, we continue to be a Gold Crown for 30 years in a row, and we are one of only 13 resorts in the world that can claim that for 30 years in 2021. So that's pretty cool. And our board has been met in person. They met in person in November. We had our budget meeting then. We also met by Zoom in April. And we met for the last 2 days here at Ramshorn. In addition to those meetings, we do receive monthly financial reports. We receive information on RCI reports. And so we're constantly in contact with management and staff. The board is striving to maintain the value of the resort. So we have been taking a more timely approach to capital needs, and we continue to evaluate that. So one of the things that we're working on with staff is to develop a new reserve study, which will address and schedule the new capital needs that are needed for our resort. We also continue to experience high rentals. What that means is that our staff, it's wonderful because that helps us. It helps our association pay for all the things that we see here, and it helps to pay for our staff. However, that is a lot of work with rentals. And so again, we have to be thanking our management and staff for rising to that occasion and meeting those changes. But with that, we have workforce shortages and very, very challenging workforce housing issues, especially here in Estes Park as a resort community. So taking that into mind, we have been looking at the pay scales of our staff and trying to both help retain our existing staff, which is probably the best thing in the world. We don't have to retain people, retrain people. But then secondly, we want to be sure that we're competitive. When we do have to replace someone, we want to make sure we're competitive. So we actually did just fund a study to look at our salary ranges and our salary positions, and we're continuing to evaluate that. And when we meet in November, we'll be looking into that, and in between now and November, our Human Resource Committee will be looking at that. Because of the capital needs and because of our staffing salary changes, we did do a modest increase in dues. It was, instead of a 3% increase, typically a 3.75% increase. You would have received that in communication in December. And we're still 30% lower than average timeshares in the United States and 40% lower than those that can call themselves a gold crown. So we're still way below the majority of timeshares. Finally, I want to mention, and I'm making a correction to those of you who are looking at your packets, I want to make a correction. It says that there are 2 board positions up for election this summer. There's actually 3, and I wrote that, and I wrote it wrong. so there's 3 positions, and they're 3-year positions for that are open for this year, coming year, for the elections. You will receive an opportunity to self-nominate yourself, and I encourage you to consider that in the midsummer. And then our voting committee will run us through that process, and by early fall, we will know who has been voted by all of you, our owners. Again, it's you, the owners, who vote for who the board members are. You make the decision, and you also have the opportunity to run and serve the board too. I encourage you to contact any of us if you have any questions. And I also ask you to make any comments or suggestions, and feel free to do so that with us and also our staff. Thank you for your interest in being here today. Thank you for those of you who are here with us virtually. And now we will begin the next portion of our meeting with a report from Deb Gibson, the manager of our resort.
Hi everybody. Thanks for being here if you're here in person or virtually. Before I start, I'd like to make a special thanks to all of our present and past board members. Their almost unlimited volunteer hours have done great service to all owners. One thing that they're not taking credit for when we talk about fees being 30 to 40% lower than most timeshares, the reason for that is we have no management company. The reason is because you have volunteer board members who work with on-site management, and 30 to 40% that usually goes out the window to a management company stays here. So our money stays here and it works harder for you. So it's, join me if you can just for a moment and applaud them. And we do buy them 2 dinners a year. So, I'd like to, we've got all of our department heads that are sitting here in the back, and I'd like them, if they would, to stand up and take a bow, because if not for their efforts, we would not find ourselves here after 31 years being one of 13 Gold Crown resorts named in 2021. Erin Dalby, your assistant resort manager, 19 years. Tina Brown, guest services manager, 19 years. Dan Hannaford, engineering manager, 24 years. He's had 1.75 years. I hope we can move the decimal soon. But Gus came to us in September 2020 with 18 years of hotel experience in virtually every aspect of hotel operations. So we're glad to have him. He's also working with us on rental revenue, because that's also one of his strong points. So, as I said, we're celebrating our 31st anniversary of offering great family vacations at the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. And by the way, if you haven't had a chance, Trail Ridge Road opened yesterday, and it's spectacular. Take your husband up. You have a late flight. We are now in our 19th year of owner-controlled association management. The focus has always been on shared goals between the owners, the board of directors, and on-site management and staff, and that's critical. Everybody is pulling in the same direction. Our original 2003 mission statement, I always put it up front so everybody can say, this is what we're trying to do every day, every month, every year. It does frame our discussions and planning and addressing the association's annual long-term goals, and serving the current and long-term interests of owner families in the association. Because it's not just the ones in the room, it's the ones that are coming down after us, right? We want to leave them a spectacular property too. I'm delighted to report that the state of our association is great. We had many challenges in 20 and 21 with COVID pandemics and wildfires. We've weathered these. We're back to near normal operations. Our activities programs resumed in April, and our annual meeting can once again be held in person. I think one of the things that we learned during the pandemic, that it was a great way of involving owners who couldn't be here to offer a virtual option. Many of you know Sean Doherty, who used to work with us at our front desk and has been with Channel 8 TV, is here doing our meeting today and providing the video. We were able to make some real additional strides. We had a combination of qualifying and forgiving of the PPP loan of $186,000 plus rentals that just were off the chart of anything we'd projected for last year. And with those two combined, we were able to open some additional funding for many more fireplaces than we originally anticipated. Dining room sets are now all done. Cabinets. We were able to do much more. And I think the board's emphasis on capital improvements has been a terrific addition in recent years. Take a look around you, those of you who are here, and see how bright the courtyard is. One of the things that we did this spring is we did order or retain an arborist who came through and did a lot of cleanup of our trees. Our primary focus the first year of this, and we hope it's done every year, was to create a safer environment both for fire and the condition of our roofs and siding and that kind of thing. But one of the added benefits, if you look around, as you can see, we are much more cleaned up than we used to be, and there's a lot more light flowing into the resort. I want to talk a little bit about our staff and how the board has interacted and our homeowners have interacted with the staff. Since every disaster we've had since we came under owner control in 2003, our board has made sure that our staff remain fully paid through the closures. The value of that loyalty to our staff has paid off in many ways, but certainly in helping us reduce turnover, which improves service and reduces recruiting and training costs. This is more important than ever in our extremely challenging job market with affordable housing, lack of childcare at a crisis point in Estes Park. It's more critical than ever. I would urge you, if you get a chance, either grab a copy of the Trail Gazette for Friday, or go online and get the article. We've got a task force that's working with Visit Estes Park, and we're trying to create some funding to try to solve a lot of this housing and childcare crisis. It'll be done, if it goes through, it'll be done through tax funding through our visitor taxes, which of course as owners you don't pay, which is nice, but our renters do. Competitive pay, year-round employment benefits program, respectful and positive work environment, all minimize turnover. The labor market is incredible here. Average home sale now in Estes Park in the first quarter of the year varied between $1.1 and $1.35 million. You can imagine how difficult that is to find housing nowadays. The importance of rental activity to the resort it's important from an operation standpoint, but it's really important to offer owners the opportunity to rent weeks or even days that they're not able to use and offset their expenses. So that's an important part. Plus, it creates an opportunity for Alex to meet nice new people who might like to own with us. The reviews for Ramshorn Village continue to be at the very top, not just the RCI scores, but also TripAdvisor, Google, Redweek.com, you name it. Any place that we're reviewed, we're usually in the top 5 percentile. Resale values continue to hold steady, much above what we typically see in the timeshare industry, because we do have resale activity on site. Fortunately, over 90% of the weeks that have ever been acquired at Ramshorn Village are still owned by the original family. So that is highly unusual. Yeah. We're going to be working on the reserves, and the reserves are important because reserves build value. Not only do they create a fund where we can continue to keep the property looking well, but also over time, they continue to allow us to update, modernize, and attract the next generation. Current real estate values in Estes Park would indicate that the resort has an estimated value of between $26 and $30 million. And with a resort like this located at the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park, I only can imagine that'll continue to go up. It has been special thanks. It has been a privilege to work with the multi-talented members of the board of directors, our committees, owners and staff at Ramshorn Village Resort, building a successful present and future for all those involved. I'd like to thank you all for coming and participating, whether it was in virtual or person. We really appreciate the interest that all of our owners always show to Ramshorn. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Mark Menard, our treasurer, will come and make our treasurer's report and investment report.
So the staff is exiting because we're busy.
And I'm going to make another correction. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to make one more correction. It's Mark Meinard. Or Minor.
Minor detail.
Yes, minor detail.
Good morning. In your packet, there's a report called the Ramshorn Village Owners Association Summary of Cash and Investments. It's just a summary of the cash and investments that we currently have. As of April 30th, you can see there's about a little over $1.8 million. And if you look back here, there's kind of a history for the last 5 years since 2017. You can see how much we have increased. Since 2017, we've increased about $700,000. So the resort is in very good financial position right now. Yesterday we met with the auditors. They presented the annual audit that we have every year, and that's also in your packet. Just briefly, I'm not going to go into detail. Briefly on the independent auditor's report, what we received was an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. Everything's good. They give the basis for the opinion, which is based upon the general accepted auditing standards in the United States. And also, just another note in there is that the responsibilities of the financial statements are the responsibility of management, not the auditors. So they've reviewed everything. They found no problems. So there's no material misstatements as reported. Now I'm going to go to the asset report here on the balance sheet. At the end of December of 2021, we had almost $3.7 million in assets. And compared to the same period in 2020, we had 3.4. So we're up about $286,000. And you can see in that cash investments is actually up $291,000. As far as liabilities, we were only up $12,000. The biggest, there really wasn't big changes. The prepaid owner's assessments went up $235,000. And last year, we had the PPP loan of $187,000 was a liability, but it had not been forgiven at that time. During 2021, the government forgave that PPP loan. We were able to keep $187,000, which you'll see that also shows up on the income statement. We ended up with total fund balances of $1.12 million, which that's our net worth. So we do have a good capital base there. Then on the income statement side, our total revenue was $2.6 million, and of that, the $187,000 PPP loan, which I had mentioned earlier, is included in there. And one thing to really note, like Denise had mentioned and Deb, the room rentals were up $287,000 over 2020. Some of that has to do with COVID, but still, I mean, you can see that the rental income is really going up, and it's really helping us financially. So we had, for 2021, we had an excess of revenue over expenses of $274,000. But of that, again, the 187 was the PPP loan, which really gave us, if you take that out, we still had excess revenue of $87,000. Any questions on that? If not, I will go to the investment statement. Mark Allison prepared this for us. He was unable to attend today, so I won't go over a lot here, but he just wanted to let us know as of April 30th, we had a market value of about $1.4 million, and our current yield is 2.7%. And for the calendar year 2021, we had a return of 1.25%, which was favorable compared to the benchmark of, they actually lost 1.44%, so we really had almost a 3% difference, favorable difference to what the benchmark was. Then of course currently this year, we all know that the market hasn't been so kind to us. We've had some unrealized losses, but I know in the last couple of days, the market has popped back about 6% from what I had seen yesterday. So we still have an annualized overall since 2016 when they took control of some of the money of about 2.39%. So we're basically invested in fixed income and in money markets. We don't want to be too aggressive. We want to, have safety in our investments and not take a big risk. So that's the report from Mark Allison. Any questions?
Why do we have so much in Midwest?
That's the investment. That's where all of our mutual funds are held. They're managing most of the money for us. The other stuff is kept locally in the banks. So we have, because that's our operations and our rental deposits, which turn over fairly quickly, so they're not invested in any more long-term.
Where are they located?
Midwest. He's in Kansas City. He's also an owner. Turn it back over to you, please.
Thank you, Mark. And our next presenter is Alex Gibson, our broker.
Talking 30, 32 years. I'll never forget bringing Deb out here and saying, hey, look at this place. We could do this, we could do that. And she goes, yeah, right, go find the money. Did. And she goes, how long is this going to take? I said, 3 to 5 years, we'll be out of it. It's become our life. It's been a good life, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've got my report. Like I said, every year I'm like a broken record as far as limited supply, ever increasing prices. The last good friend here in the audience and owner, Gerald Mayo, who owns Estes Park Team Realty. Have you ever imagined the last 18 months? Just insane. Now a couple of new listings brought down the median price a little bit. The one is a 1919 home down on Riverside, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 square feet for only $385,000.
You can't live in
Really?
Oh,
What's wrong with
it.
it?
It's a tear
Oh.
There's no running water. You don't want to even go in the bathroom, so it's a lot.
So you've been over to look at it?
Many times.
You can help me with this. I haven't seen this one. I saw it pop in MLS. 1896, 1,200 square foot, 2 bedroom, 1 bath for only $455,000. The one that everybody at home should really consider your dream, 9 acres at the base of Longs Peak. That was what, 2 days ago? And I don't have that written down. You may be able to help me. I think it was 500 square feet.
Not very big.
Didn't have a septic. It had one of those
Compost.
compost toilets in the bathroom, but that was only $500,000, I think. So,
It's gotta be vertical.
yeah. So that's what's happening in Estes Park, and it's not gonna slow down. Deb's dad, 40 years ago said, you know, Estes Park is unlike any other place that he could think of, and he always called it Donut Hall. We've got a small little bit of private land available for private ownership, surrounded by Rocky Mountain National Park and Roosevelt National Forest. And it's going. And of course, Deb glossed over the workforce housing. She is the chair of Visit Estes Park, and that's a big thing that's going on now, is to address those needs. We have tried to establish a good, strong in-house resale program. That's where timeshare has had the bad reputation for years, especially with the big hitters like the Hiltons and the Marriotts and that. They are ever increasing and growing, and an individual has no exit program. Speaking of that term, stay away from exit programs. We've saved several of our owners. They are scams. They try to get you to pay them money up front, saying they're going to take care of it.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Deb and I, was it 2 years ago, we decided, okay, we had some time. We got an invitation to go to a seminar in Fort Collins. We were running late. She was apologetic as we walked in the door, saying, I'm sorry, we had an appointment, we're late. And we looked around the room, and we were the only ones there. They started going ka-ching because they asked how many weeks we owned at Ramshorn, and we said 20. And their thing was $3,000 per week. If you gave them, they'll sell it. But they don't. They don't take your obligation away from it, which we've been able to do that in-house. It's not as fast as a lot of people would like. And I gotta stress, because every now and then I get somebody, you gotta remember that 19 years ago, the developer disappeared. There is no developer. There is no they. It's us, the homeowners association. Because I've had people say, well, you sell their weeks before mine. Who was they? Now, granted, our association, we own 346 weeks. 350, okay. I have sold, there's been maybe 4 or 5 in the last 5 years. They were strictly off-season summit inventory that no individual had. No, I've sold individuals off-season summit inventory. But other than those 5, I haven't sold anything for the homeowners association in the last 15, 16 years. It's all individual resellers that are getting that attention. It's the same, you gotta remember, as far as the competitiveness, one of our new owners in the crowd wanted to book October this fall. We had to say, no, that happens 2 years out. But the advantage of booking at Ramshorn, this board, the previous boards have always given the individual Ramshorn owners the advantage. Everybody that owns weeks at Ramshorn can book their weeks 2 years in advance. Deb cannot set anything aside that's owned by our association as a group until 1 year out. So the homeowners have the advantage of booking the best weeks, and that's always been the case, and it continues to. So, summer is finally here. We spent the last two winters in Estes Park due to our elderly dog Cooper, and this was one of the worst I remember. So it's so nice to see the sun out, and the tops are down, and the animals are out big time right now. Denise and Carl, they saw triplets,
Triplet elk.
triplet elks at Endell Valley last night.
Are they scattering?
Yes.
So, thanks for your support. Look forward to seeing everybody when you come back this summer.
Thank you, Alex. Our governance committee did not have any activity in the past year, so they did not file a report. Our voting committee obviously had activity. We did have 2 positions open in this past year in 2021. And those positions were filled, and one-year position, and it was filled. And as I noted earlier in my remarks, there are 3 positions, 3-year positions open this year, and there'll be an opportunity to self-nominate again this summer. So the status of our owned weeks is that we own 93 red weeks, 133 white weeks, and 124 blue weeks, for a total of 350, as we just mentioned. Lastly, I want to mention that the next meeting of the board will be on October 31st and November 1st. That's when we discuss the budget, and we adopt the budget and then send information to you about its availability for your review by December. And then next year, our next annual meeting will be on the Memorial Day weekend again. It will be on Saturday, May 27th. And the board will meet May 25th and May 26th, Thursday and Friday, as we did this year. And you're always welcome to attend those meetings. With that, we are done with the formal presentations of our board of directors and our staff. And we will be happy to take any questions, and they can come from those of you who are here in person or those who are here virtually. And Sean will be helping us address any of those, and he's raising his hand.
Question from Jerry Iwanski. Is it possible to make it a standard process to utilize the clubhouse year-round for owners to reserve their weeks 2 years out?
So Deb, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I don't think I need it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So there, is Tiffany here? Tiffany's not here. Jerry, if you can hear me and anybody else that's interested, that could be done. However, when we do that, we have to leave the clubhouse open and unlocked. And there are only about 12 to 14 weeks a year where we would have anybody in the room. So from a security standpoint, I don't see leaving, just permanently fixing the reservation in the clubhouse except for those weeks where we know people will be lined up. So we already do that, I think, 12, 14 weeks out of the year. The rest of the year, we'd be wide open, no security, and the doors unlocked, so.
Ken Stabley just said, repeat please, number of red weeks, white weeks, blue weeks.
Sure. We have 93 red weeks, 133 white weeks, and 124 blue weeks, for a total of 350 weeks owned by us, the owners.
So I want to add on top of that, one of the things that Alex just said, as far as almost every sale that he's made in the last 5 years has been of individual resellers' weeks. One thing that everybody should be aware of with the 1 year out, and I've informed the board this multiple times, the association is at a disadvantage if they cannot reserve the most popular weeks 2 years out, both from a standpoint of rental income, but also from a standpoint of resale. Because the number one thing we see with new homeowners now is, what weeks am I able to use? They're interested in the floor plan, they are somewhat interested in the location on the property, but the biggest thing that they're looking for is, what does that seller have reserved? The association usually has the least valuable weeks each year. So that's number one. Number two, from an ownership basis, as long as we're continuing to cash flow income from those weeks, sufficient to work the budget. And also, as long as we own those weeks, it gives all owners more flexibility in reserving their own weeks. If all of those weeks were taken by other owners, we would be at 100% capacity, and there would be no movement when an owner has a change in plans, or when an owner is late making the reservations, or that kind of thing. So remember that that provides you some flexibility. And thirdly, we have additional rental bonus programs that owners use fairly regularly. Without that inventory, that becomes less too. So is there another?
Can I finish up one other thought? You may want to mention that what that 350 represents, the total universe of weeks at Ramshorn Village is 2,346 weeks. So that's a small percentage that's owned by the HOA. What does anybody want to do a calculator? Less than 15? Mark?
Less than 15 and over 10. Yes.
From Bill Under, how many owner weeks are currently for sale?
Are you talking about these owner weeks, so resale weeks?
I don't have a price list with me, but I have about 12 2-week packages, probably 6 to 7 3-week packages. Don't have any larger packages at the moment. And every now and then I have somebody that does sell a single week.
So again, if you compare that to the universe of 2,346 weeks, that's right. There are timeshare properties out there that have 50, 60% resale.
Yeah.
So we're like under 10. Yeah.
Yes.
Good question. Have you done a study on the 350 weeks that we own, how much revenue it brings in?
That changes every year.
I know, but as opposed to what it would pay in the dues. In other words, if its assessment is a $700 on 1 week, did that one bring in $700? Not specifically, but overall. I mean,
No, I would say no. It depends on, every year is different.
well, I know it
Steve.
depends on
Yeah.
that, but if we knew
But-
that number, it would be, how critical do we need to get those sold? But if they are
Yeah, that's a
breaking
good question.
even, if they are breaking even, then they're really not hurting us. They're really
Right.
helping all the current
Right.
owners
And there's one other
by
thing.
not
that-
competing with 350 more people.
I think that's a very good question, and it's something we could look into and try to get closer to. But the other thing that hasn't been mentioned here, and we, the board, know needs to be considered, it would require a change in our articles of agreement with all of you, your contracts basically, is that we said that every home was only going to have 51 weeks available. 1 week was saved because there's major improvements sometimes needed. When you're totally redoing plumbing or painting or refinishing all the woodwork, that's a lot of time. And so it's getting more and more, and do we need a few more days or 1 more week? So that buffer that Deb was just referencing, those 350 weeks, besides being rentals, are also helpful to us because they allow a home for major refreshing. So your point is very well taken, and it's something we could get a little closer to. And I believe even Erin, during our last meetings, mentioned that she'd like to have a better handle on how we can maximize our rentals of our association weeks, but what is the true value when you think about dues?
Yeah,
too?
I mean,
Yes,
are all the owners really paying to carry them, or are they kind of carrying themselves, which?
Right.
exactly, exactly. That's a good point. Very good point. And we do want to look into those kinds of things.
Good idea.
Yeah, great question.
There's another question?
For Robert Donovan, does net rental income cover the maintenance fees for the HOA-owned weeks?
That's the same question.
Same question, same.
Yeah, yes.
Same question.
Like mind.
Yes.
I think we can answer part of it under here. If you take out the 350 weeks times what that maintenance fee would be,
It's 280.
$280,000.
$280,000.
So did we make rent off of that to equal 280? Your sheets show you clearly did.
Right.
I mean,
And you can't go up to 350. We take those homes offline for at least 1 week a year. So you have to net those out, those weeks. So it's really more like 300.
Well,
That are rentable.
yeah, and remember there's 93 red weeks. The 93 red weeks are going to create the majority of the income. The other weeks are all white and blue season, and they're all at the back of the line for rental. And we literally probably use half of those, I would guess, for reserve projects. So, you know, because they're sitting empty, that's when we're working in them, that's the winter time. Yeah.
And remember when Deb referenced this, but I'm not sure, you know, everyone maybe caught it, is that it does offer some value to us too. Because if you decided besides the weeks you own, all of a sudden, hey, I can make a trip in September. I'm gonna double check with Tiffany and see if I can get in. And then you get a special deal depending on how far you book out because you're an owner. And it gives us some value, other value to add to what we already have. So there's really quite a big benefit. And we, you know, we get a cost break. We get a 25% cost break in red week. And then we get even a better cost break in white weeks. So we have significant value in those 350 weeks that we get to use as owners.
And the other thing, not to know, but if you figure out that if it's maintenance now at 700, that only means average night rental, we might only have to rent it 3 nights out of the whole year to cover that unit's maintenance fees. And I'm sure we cover 3 nights out of the year.
In the red season particularly.
In the red season, you know, where some nights are at over 600. So I think it's...
Yeah, but we don't get those. When I say we, that's not my fault.
There was another question? Yes.
Is there any movement to making an online reservation system?
Yes, there is.
Can we talk about that?
Deb?
I'm sorry.
There was a question on online reservation systems.
Hold on just a second. Let me just, my phone went off.
Okay.
So I was turning it off.
Okay.
I thought I had. No, it's not.
Yeah, but it was making a
Okay, so someone spiritually is trying to reach me. On the online reservations, we've made some progress, not as much progress as we wanted. We've got the system installed. Tiffany is now troubleshooting it. We're working our way through all the landing pages to customize it to our language. I have to tell you that unless there's a change in the reservation policy, no one's going to be able to book those 12, 14 weeks online because they're going to be gone, just like they are now. So unless we completely revise our reservation policy, by the time anybody hits that inventory becomes available online, it's already gone because people have been waiting in line.
You might want to address that over the last 19 years, there have been several committees formed to come up with a new reservation policy, and no one's ever come up with anything better than what we've got.
So really, the online reservation system will address opportunities, especially in the off-season. Really, during the red season, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tiffany, but what I heard during our meetings was that there's several times during the year where the online system they're going to have to call you because of the owner, the significant activity that's already occurring with owners and wanting to make sure that an owner somehow is not displaced. So that's the most important thing we're trying to do, is not displace owners, especially during that time period.
And there's 52 weeks a year. There's about 12 to 14 that book farther out. And 2 or 3 of those weeks are off-season weeks. So, in October primarily. So, one of the other things that we'll be able to do with the online system is you'll be able to, when everything is uploaded to the system, you'll be able to go into your account, see your confirmations, see your reservations. I don't know about you, but I own 3 different properties, and it's kind of nice to have a place to go so I don't have to call them up and say, when am I supposed to be there again? So you've got that, and also Erin is now backfilling all our past made payments for this year, next year, etc. We're now trying to keep the new system current. Tiffany's doing that. So we're hoping after the first of the year, you'll also be able to online make payments. So that'll be a nice thing. You won't have to call in. Nobody will write your number down wrong. So anyway, all of that is coming together. You'll also be able to access all the association documents there.
So we expect that to be
By next May, we should hopefully.
functional.
Is there a way you can set that like 360 days out you could rent? You know, like Xanterra does in the national parks. 1 year to the day, if you set something like 360, that would give everybody that wanted to rent, the owners have a.
You mean as far as reserving?
Yeah, password that they could get in, that if you're not an owner, 360 days ahead of time, you could reserve, something
So
like that.
some sort of additional
sure there are all those
benefit for
kind of things
online,
in it.
for owners for those weeks
For
that might be
online rental?
available. So
Yeah.
For like if
online.
you're gonna rent from another owner?
Yeah, if you wanted to rent, say I want to come next week and I don't have any more weeks left, you could get online up to 360 days out.
Well, you currently can get online as a rental guest and make a reservation. You just can't do it at the rate that you currently have. Also, there's some limitations. For example, next week is a red week, for example.
Right.
And one of the things that the governance committee worked with the board to do is you're limited to the number of red weeks you can rent
Right.
to the number you own. And the reason that they did that is because, you know, it's a 25% discount, significant discount during red season, particularly as rates continue to climb. And we didn't want someone that, you know, was booking 4 or 5, which we had, 4 or 5 homes at their discount. So there's things that would have to be managed, so whether or not that could be done online, I kind of doubt it. So your best bet is to check with us. Now, the likelihood of us being completely booked on rental inventory a year in advance is not high. So if you wanted to call a year in advance to reserve something,
Except for those 12 to 14 weeks.
well, not necessarily for rental, because you've got owner use and you have owners who reserve to put it up for rental.
They want to rent it.
Yeah.
They know that that's a value, and they rent it actually to make something off of it, make back their dues and more.
Yeah.
Sean, I think there was a question.
Yeah, this might have already been answered. It seems to be related to reservation. It says, this is from Shirley. Alex and Deb's comments about reserving the most popular week brings up the question about our reservation system, which gives priority to those on site or nearby.
Absolutely.
Has there been any consideration to revising the method to include a lottery for owners requesting the same house for the same week?
Oh, no, that's a can of worms.
Yeah, it has been, yeah. It's a can of worms. Yeah, what happens, and I personally would not be in favor of that, and I'll tell you why. You have people who bought with a certain reservation system in place, and that if they wanted to go through the pain and aggravation of lining up and spending the night in the clubhouse to get the weeks that they wanted to get for their families, that's what they bought under. If you change the system, you're changing the rights that they had at the time that they acquired the weeks. That I have a problem with. But the other side of the coin is lotteries. Almost, and if you do some Googling on lotteries, timeshares, you'll see a lot of real negative stuff. Resorts that have tried it, some still have it, but a lot of them abandon it quickly after, because guess what happens? The lottery is telling you when you get to come here, not when you want to be here. And it's going to limit you're basically letting the lottery determine when somebody's going to get in. So for example, we've had owners that have bought to attend a doctor's conference every year at the Y. Lottery's not going to guarantee them that they're going to be able to attend the doctor's conference at the Y. Standing in line 2 years out is going to guarantee them, if they want to go through that pain, that they can be here.
But it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it to
She's the
them.
one standing
We
in line.
also
Yeah.
have several owners that own several weeks that do family get-togethers.
Right.
Exactly, that's what we do.
If that was Clark's family is one of those, how many homes do you get at a certain time? Because your family owns a lot of weeks.
Well, they all individually own.
If that was taken away from you on a lottery basis.
How could you get together?
We've changed the entire process that's been in place for 30 years.
Yeah, in our case, and I say this proudly, I guess, the fact that we've had family gatherings during a week in July for 18 years. My oldest granddaughter's 17, so she's been here 18 times. And there's about 35 of us, and so we need multiple homes. And growing. So that makes a big difference to us, you're right.
It would change everything about Ramshorn.
Not just your family, we have several people that do those family get-togethers, and if we turn around and say, well, you can't do that anymore.
I think it would go a long way to turn us into just the typical timeshare, where people maybe don't want to hold on to it longer because they
definitely
they can't use it for the reason that they bought it originally.
Exactly.
And they'll start getting rid of their weeks and they'll decrease everybody's value. So personally, I mean, it's to our advantage because we've been using that for 20-some years, but I also think it would really diminish everybody's value right away.
I think there are a lot of intangibles because we have made friends here. The Ralph Lees, that's who I'm going to give an example of, who live in Hamilton, Texas, but we would have never met them and shared the escape during the fire of whatever that year was, 2019, with them. You know, having Wagyu steaks with the embers still coming onto the steaks, and I thought it was giant pepper. But we have friends to this day that we don't see them, but we see them here, that are intangible.
And you try to schedule the weeks at the same time.
We brought our
Because we're
grandkids
fishers.
every year. We're on the second set of grandkids now, and we'll
Yeah.
be back with
We have two groups.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be back here this summer, and we plan 9 months out for the airfares out of Dallas to Denver, because I fly them back and forth, because they're only 5 and 9, so, but our traditions, as well as his traditions, are there, and those are intangibles that you can't quantify in a lottery or in a computer that doesn't have, artificial intelligence doesn't get it.
It's not Tiffany.
Yeah. Well, can we celebrate that? Let me tell you, I'll celebrate it all day long. But it's just that human element, and that's why computers will never be able to do it.
And understand that when Alex said, because he's, when he first created Ramshorn and designed the ownership and the different weeks of the year and what the packages were, in the old days of doing timeshare, you would have bought fixed weeks and you would have guaranteed that you would have had the same week every year. Guess what? One of those kids is going to decide to get married in Honolulu during your week, and then you're out of luck. So we set it up on a reservation basis. But had it been on a fixed week, all the good weeks would have been taken in the first 5 seconds. Yeah.
First 30 homes.
Yeah, and then we'd be sitting with probably 40% unsold inventory.
How many total homes are there?
46.
So the first 46 would take.
But the main disadvantage is you wouldn't be able to talk to Tiffany anymore because the lottery would be solving it all.
Stay here till.
Are there any other questions?
Sean, is there any other questions?
Can I say one more thing?
Huh?
I have like 3 comments that I can.
Can I get a
Yeah,
comment?
sure.
Yeah. First one's from George Hicks. It's worth pointing out that the association's balance sheet very much understates the value of the association's weeks. But beyond that, those weeks do earn more as rentals than they would make in assessments if sold.
That comes from a scientist.
I mean, particularly last year when.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a comment, yeah.
I'm sorry, he's the money man.
We have an in-person comment.
Yeah, I just want to say, along with the lottery system, we come here the last week of June and the first week of July, and we meet approximately 8 to 10 families from all over the country. And if a lottery system was in place, that would be over with. And so in the same vein you were talking about, a lottery would wreck the vacation that we've learned to love at the Ramshorn.
And you have to stand in line to get them 2 years out, but it's worth the sweat equity.
I don't mind standing in line. We have
You come for the lasagna.
We have a party when we stand in line. We cook out bratwurst and have Bloody Marys.
And the intangible that you talked about is for people like us, is the fact that we're building value for our next generation.
Right.
And the
Yes.
generation
Correct.
following that.
Correct.
Who are still going to
Those
want to
memories
come, that are
are
still going to
invaluable.
want to come here and use the weeks that we own when we're not able to do that.
That's where their memories are.
Yeah.
That's exactly the whole
And
process.
that's a big part of what Ramshorn is, to at least to our
And it
family.
starts with those babies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. There's another in-person comment, and then we'll go back to Sean.
So I'm new here. Sounds like unequivocally that the lottery's a bad idea, so can we move on?
Yeah. Thank you. Sean, don't you have any more comments?
Yeah, just more comments. Yeah, from Suzanne Hicks, I'd like to recognize Tiffany for the amazing job she does managing the reservations on the phone.
Yes. Thank you.
And then this is from Robert Donathan, kind of regards talking about the lottery system. It says Grand Timber Lodge in Breckenridge uses a lottery system for owner reservations, and it's a nightmare. You don't know what week you will get. And then Shirley, as I think a follow-up to her previous comment, I think my comment has been misunderstood. I really don't want to get into an online discussion about this, but I'm talking not about being on property, but a specific home. If I want to be here a specific week, I'll reserve it, but I prefer the home in which I purchased time.
So on that, I don't know if everybody's aware of, because there is competition also. There are owners that, you know, really are wanting to be in their home and whatever. So, and attached, and I totally understand it. So you not only have a complication, you have the high demand weeks, but also people being in their own home. Under the developer management, you had, you know, you were allowed to use different homes. If you owned in your home, you had to rent in your home. There were a lot more restrictions. Since the owners have taken over, one of the things that our philosophy is, if let's say Shirley had a week and she was the second in line, somebody before her had put the home up for rent, Tiffany and Alex get together 3 or 4 days before the week starts and look at who's still coming, who's in their homes, who should be in their homes. If Shirley's home has been put up for rental and Shirley wants to be here, we're going to put Shirley in her home and take that rental income and move it to another home, because the renter isn't attached to the home. Correct. So the money doesn't necessarily follow a specific home, specific week. It follows a specific week. Right? So we try to, and that's helped a lot, but there are certain weeks of the year, if you combine the high demand and a high demand home, that it gets tough.
But we don't live in a perfect world.
We don't live in a perfect world.
But it's really very good.
We try.
It looks like Sean has another one.
Yeah, so another comment, and then there was a question from
Okay.
someone else. So the comment's from Steve Watson. Very much a fan of the current reservation system. As a relatively recent owner, it's put us in good position in getting the times that we want. We've had no issues with any reservations that we have placed thus far. With a 3-bedroom unit and so few available, we've been pleasantly surprised. So that's one. And then there's a question from Suzanne Hicks. I saw in the packet that there were advertising expenses. What advertising do we do?
We do a lot because we are promoting not only the owner rentals, but we want to do the best job that we can on doing owner rentals, and also we want to rent the association week. So there's multiple things that we do, including Google ads, TripAdvisor, print, but very little. Vacationland, we did a print advertising for the first time this year with Vacationland because they've got some new features. Look for it in your homes. So there's a myriad of different things. We work with Visit Estes Park. Of course, I'm a big believer. I'm on the board. So we do a lot of advertising with that entity, and that entity does about $3 million in marketing a year, including reserves and things. So,
Channel 8.
Channel 8, we're on there all the time for people that are here locally. There are more things, and I'm probably not thinking of them, but that's also Booking.com, Airbnb, blah, 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 some of the fee structured things as we need them. Those tend to be a little bit more expensive, so we tend to use those mostly in time periods where we have available occupancy that we haven't filled on our own. A lot of what we get now at this point in the age of the property is organic.
The other thing is that we make sure that that those weeks and those different programs are maximizing where we rank when you when you do Google for a search. So the analytics behind it to make sure we're at the top of a choice. When you Google resorts in Colorado or in Estes Park, we're going to come to the very top, and they're going to see us first. And all of that costs money, but it does bring value to us because it means we get more rentals.
I do want to make a comment about rentals. We had an absolutely fabulous year last year, and I think it's in the packet or whatever, but a lot of that was driven by COVID and people wanting to vacation in self-contained with kitchens and those kind of things. A lot of our rental success was due to Gus down at the front desk and his ability to work that system. But rentals are on a slower pace this year, and we're keeping a close eye on that because that impacts our overall income on our overall things that we can do. And so we're going to meet hopefully maybe in a couple months and review again. We don't know what the year is going to turn out like, but I just want to make sure that the owners know that we're keeping a close eye on rentals and what impact that might have on our overall success.
And to qualify, every month so far has been the second best ever in
Exactly,
history. So it's not like it's slowed.
No,
But
it's just
compared
not
to
on-
last year, I mean, everybody was looking. That's why vacation homes too flourished.
Right.
Because people wanted to be somewhere safe, somewhere like home, somewhere they didn't have to be on an elevator or in a hallway, and somewhere where they could cook because they weren't going to restaurants. So some of our competitive advantage went away a little bit, but we're still our second best year.
You don't think gas is gonna change that and all the Coloradans are gonna wanna come to Rocky Mountain National
That's
Park
true.
is my thought.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think there'll be a lot of that.
I do. Yeah.
Shorter trips you're
I
gonna
do.
take rather than canceling, driving to California or someplace else.
I
and
think
come
that you're
here.
gonna see maybe a net effect actually.
Yeah, and that's why we're keeping an eye on it. Deb's exactly right. It's the second best year to date that we've had in rentals. We expect that to continue, but it is something that we're keeping an eye on because it does
And
impact.
Steve here has a
If
question.
you don't advertise, there's a whole group of young people coming along that never heard of Ramshorn.
Yes,
And
exactly.
if you don't make it known to them,
Thank you.
and they don't look at newspapers, they don't read magazines. If it's not
Nothing in
here,
print.
it does not exist in the world.
Exactly.
And so,
One
by
other thing
Googling
I'd
things
like-
like that, they'll find it.
I'd like to bring up the point, along with Clark, what else we're looking at is that we talked about our employees and we want to retain who we have. If you
Are
can
they
look in the
asking?
local Estes paper and see how many jobs are wanted, people are advertising, and what they're paying, it'll shock you as to what other people are willing to pay and potentially pirate away what we have. We don't want that to happen. We want to keep this property up, maintained. If we don't, if you walk into your home and it looks poor, I'll use other words, but I won't, as to that, it decreases why you want to be here, why you want to keep your weeks, and why else we're going to do for rents. So that all really lays on the, I think, on the backs of our employees. Wanting to work, stay here, be here every day, keeping working, that takes an incentive. And so what else we've strongly looked at and we're implementing is there's going to be some raises, and I want everyone to realize that's cost. But what do you want to come to? You want to come to a place that's poorly maintained and looks shabby, or not? I'm sorry, it's going to probably cost a little more. I just kind of put out to everybody, it may not be able to maintain at the rate we have had it because of that, but we don't want to lose employees.
Which is why we did the salary survey, so the market was analyzed, and we know where we stand in the market, and we're going to try to make sure that we're very up in range with that market. And so, and of course, we have, as you just heard when Deb made her announcements, we have a lot of long-term staff who are fantastic, and we don't want to lose them. And we also have some bonus programs that we awarded last year in May, and we're awarding again this year. So, and that's all to retain our staff.
Yeah, more comments.
Okay.
This is from Steve Watson. Note that owners can help in regards to advertising. There are social media groups where people are always looking for lodging recommendations. Socialize Ramshorn for rentals as it helps all of us. Also submit reviews. That's comment one. And then Jerry Iwanski says, great meeting, very informative. Many thanks to everyone involved in putting the meeting together and for hosting it and allowing us to Zoom in. And then from Steve Watson, lastly, a shout out to the cleaning staff. Ramshorn is consistently the cleanest and best maintained property that we stay at.
That's absolutely true. In fact, even though they're not here, let's give them a round of applause.
Well, I'd like to follow up on what Matt was saying about costs and stuff like that. I'm new on the board. I just kind of finished up Buffy's term that she wasn't able to complete. And you know, the one thing that I've been coming here for almost 30 years, and it just really impressed me, the current board, excluding myself, and the actual brain damage and the stress and the worry and how much they were really trying to absolutely keep our dues as low as absolutely possible. I mean, it was almost I was so impressed that they were almost like hurting because they had to increase the dues 0.75%. And so I just want to say, as a new board member, who hadn't been on the board, that I was just really impressed with how they look after our money.
It's all our money.
Yes, that's true.
That's the huge thing about the difference between development management, professional outside management, etc. They've got their own set of things that they're concerned about. This association, being homeowner controlled, and with an elected board from homeowners, is always going to be owner centric, and that's huge.
Remember, any profit just goes back into the property. It doesn't go to anyone. It goes back into the property. We're a not-for-profit.
And when we do a budget, our goal isn't to have a profit. Our goal is to break even. Obviously we don't want our expense to go up. We're all owners. We don't want to pay any more than what we have to, but we have to, have the expense that it takes required, to run the place, keep the staff. But you see a surplus there. A lot of that was from the PPP loan, but that helped keep our staff employed during COVID and helps improve the property. But our goal is always a break-even budget, never to make a profit.
And keep enough in cash reserves for cash flow. That's it. That's really it. So are there any other questions or comments? With that, we'll adjourn the 2022 Ramshorn Homeowners Association meeting. Thank you.